Thank you for joining us today. This is Justin Crowe, VP of Education Programs and Partnerships for Providence St. Joseph Health. And today we have a guest, Robin Henderson, who's the Chief Executive for Behavioral Health in Oregon. Robin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Justin. It's a pleasure.
So as we focus today on an intersection of education and health, in particular mental health, and I think that is a topical item, particularly given the school closures and the social distancing that is a norm in most of the communities that we're in today. So, Robin, when we think about this, it seems like we're certainly in an unprecedented time. You know, schools are closing, the stock market's not doing well, restaurants, bars, athletic facilities are closing. In some ways, it kind of feels like the 9/11 moment for this generation, except every day brings a little bit more uncertainty. How would you recommend that people manage the stress and anxiety that these kinds of disruptions cause?
The biggest piece of advice that I give and I try to practice myself is establish a routine and establish some predictability. Because amongst all of the unpredictability in your life right now, we all need some things we can control. So for many of us, our kids are unexpectedly out of school, and many of us also have childcare needs right now that we didn't expect to have because our childcare centers aren't necessarily operational at this point, and school's out, and we didn't expect this. So it's really important that as parents, but also even if you don't have kids, establish a routine that's predictable. Get up at the same time every day, even if you're working from home. Hundreds and thousands of people are now working from home, and they've never done that before. So for them, it could be kind of flooding. My home is my refuge. Well, how do I make my refuge my workplace? Establishing a routine of what you do and when you do it and doing the best to stick to it is one of the best things you can do. But that's also got to include things like breaks, exercise, a coffee break, even a little bit of a break to play on your social media, for instance, and take a look and talk to your friends and relatives. We know that Instagram usage and LinkedIn usage and other platforms like that are way up because people are looking for connections. And the only way we can connect right now is through social. So making sure that your schedule includes times for breaks, times for socializing, and times, frankly, for exercise. Those are the things that are going to help us stay healthy and well.
Well, that's helpful. Thank you. So, with the education closures in particular, that obviously has a huge impact on teens. And we know that 20% of Americans have a mental health condition in general, and that suicide rates are the highest since 2000 for folks in the age range of 15 to 24. So what can teens in particular do to manage stress? And I'm thinking particularly of those that may have anxiety issues to begin with.
That's a really great question. I have a teen who has identified with anxiety issues, and this is a really tough thing for them. They don't have their routine connection with their friends. They don't have the freedom and ability to go out and even socialize at school and do things like that. And they're also in this position where there's a huge level of uncertainty around things like graduation. My child's a senior in high school, and they're looking at the last semester of school, the time when they're supposed to be having their prom, their spring sports, and even their graduation ceremony. All of that is currently in jeopardy. And what does that look like for them? At the same time, many of these teens also are in the college acceptance process. What happens for them while they're waiting through the rest of their grades, their SAT scores, and things that have been canceled nationally? For an anxious kid, this is unprecedented. And the worst part about it is nobody has an answer. You can't look at anybody today and say, what's life going to look like in May? Because no one really knows. There's a lot of predictive modeling out there, but often when we look at predictive modeling, we look at the worst case scenario and we don't look at the best. So what we need to do with our teens is to continue to let them talk this out, continue to give them all the information that we have, good or bad, about what's happening with their school situation, but also give them the sensibility to know, what's happening is unprecedented. And for instance, in healthcare, we're seeing regulatory releases from things that we never thought we'd see in my lifetime. Watching the president say, well, we're going to use FaceTime and Skype for therapy, and we're going to lift the HIPAA restrictions around that so you can do that. That's unprecedented. That means they're not going to let, this entire class of kids not move forward and go on with their lives and their college and their careers. We will figure this out. We just don't know what figuring it out looks like right now. So that's part of it. But making time also for family time. We're all home, many of us working from home, and we need to think about what are the family time things we can do together. Have a family game night and talk, and just talk about anything you want. Talk about something other than COVID-19. Talk about, hey, what's our next fantasy family vacation when we can go back to taking a vacation and have a vacation planning night, or whatever it is that your family likes to do together. But remember that all of the social things your kids are used to doing have been disrupted. It's also really helpful to give them ideas like, hey, I saw online there were some kids that were doing a virtual, tea party, or even a virtual party where everybody gets together and brings their snacks, and then they plan an hour and they just hang out and talk and gab like they normally would over FaceTime. As adults, that's called a virtual happy hour, incidentally, but I wasn't going to recommend that for kids.
Nice. Are there that's really helpful, Robin. Are there specific resources that teens can go to?
There are a lot of resources out there, and there's a lot more coming. The folks at Work to Be Well have been working on standing up their Work to Be Well Hub, which should be up, I think, on Monday of next week. And that will have all kinds of ideas and opportunities and different virtual things. There's a podcast group I work with called Talk to Be Well that's getting ready to do weekly podcasts live with teens from around Oregon, Washington, and California, talking about their ideas of how do I cope with this stress? What do I do about anxiety? And it'll be on Instagram Live, and you'll be able to put in questions in real time and be able to really see what other teens are doing right now. Those are great opportunities. I also see opportunities for learning from places like Character Strong and from teachers all over the country who are leading virtual art classes, dance classes, yoga classes, you name it. If you wanted to learn something different, just go online on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, any of these places, and look for people who are offering these types of things up. One of my favorite things happening right now are the concerts, the challenge concerts, where you have John Legend in his own piano room doing a half-an-hour concert, and all of these other entertainers who are standing up and doing these great concerts just for people to enjoy. I saw the Oregon Zoo today put on a virtual zoo tour, so you can actually go to the zoo and see the animals, even though the zoo is closed. So there's lots of things like that to see and do, and we need to see and do those things. We need to take advantage of the opportunities that we have to learn the things that we've been thinking about, because you can't spend your entire day playing Xbox. That's not a thing. You need to kind of break up your day and do some other things that stimulate other portions of your brain and keep you engaged in what we know is a wonderful world that we're going to get back to. And I think that's the other piece. We all need to remember that there's no model that says this is the end of the world. The models that are out there say this is going to be difficult for a while, but then it's going to be okay. And remembering that it's going to be okay gives us the opportunity to really take a breath. Let's get through today. Let's see what tomorrow brings. But what can I do today to not only make my own world okay, but to take care of somebody else too?
That's great. How can parents help, or how can teachers help that are still engaged with students, through online learning?
One of the great ways teachers can help, and I was just talking with a teenager about this last night, is by reaching out to their students and sending them an email. I had a student mention to me last night that, their favorite teacher is usually really, really engaged and always checking up on them and always emailing them, and they haven't heard from them since school got out. And that's really, really hard, because students have that relationship with the teacher. And I know this is a lot to ask, but having teachers reach out to your classrooms and say, hey, I know we're not in session right now, but wouldn't it be great if maybe we all read, the book we were reading in class, whatever book that is, and had a conversation about it. Who's up for a book club? Who's up for those types of things? Because teachers are bored too. And I understand that not all teachers can do that. But many can, and many can reach out and have some opportunities, even if it's just an email with, some heart emojis and some funny memes that says, what, even though we're not in class together, you still matter. And that's one of the things we need to remember to do with each other. This can be very isolating, especially for our elders. Right now, our elders don't have the ability to, for many of them, even leave their homes to go shopping. So think about the elders in your neighborhood and the elders in your life. What could you do to help them out? Could you FaceTime with them every day and just say, hey, how you doing? And have a conversation. For little kids, it's really great. I mean, this is grandma's story time on FaceTime, right? That's a really great way to go. But for teenagers, I have my own kids, take a whole bunch of soup down to my mother's house and leave it on the porch for her. Those are really good things that we can do to keep connected, and it gives our teens something to do, and it also takes care of a population that really is isolating right now and needs our help.
So let's talk a little bit about obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. So it's actually fairly common, and it seems like the admittedly important guidance to constantly wash hands and use hand sanitizer and practice social distancing could really impact these folks in particular. You have any advice in that area?
You're absolutely right. It's the epitome of the "see, I told you so," because it really is feeding into that need. But part of what we can do is routinize that in terms of a schedule and really treat it in the logical way. I'll give you some great examples. Establish some basic rules in your house. If you walk in the house and you've just come in from outside, first thing you need to do is wash your hands. After you leave, sanitize, those types of things. Setting up those boundaries of what do we know logically are good guidelines, and then sticking to those guidelines is the best way to handle that. I also think that it's really good opportunity for folks to engage in learning some new ways of cleaning. I mean, cleaning now has become a really important thing. We don't need to overdo it, but I think the CDC guidelines actually are very, very sensible. And if you find yourself stressing about not meeting those guidelines or stressing about not being good enough in those areas, one really great thing to do is to reach out to an online support group. There are a lot of online support groups for anxiety and for OCD and for all other types of things where people are talking about their coping mechanisms and how they set boundaries and limits around that. There's a reason that we say it's the birthday song, or it's this song, or it's that song, because too much hand washing and too much cleaning can be damaging. And we don't want to be damaging at that point, but we need to give people practical limits that they can live within. But again, it goes back to the basics of rest, good food, good exercise, and taking care of yourself and reaching out for help when you need it. I talked the other day with the executive director of Lines for Life, which is the suicide hotline here in Oregon. And they don't only do suicide, they do all kinds of different emotional support for all kinds of different populations, including teens through their youth line and veterans through the Veterans Crisis Line. And what they're finding are sometimes people just need to talk through their anxiety, talk through their obsession, and really put it into perspective so that they can move forward. They're trained to do that, and that's what they do. And they've moved their workforce to be 95% remote, working from home. So we've really been able to change even how the crisis system responds so that they can be safe in these times.
Thank you. Let's close with one final question. So what are you hearing directly from teens during this time of school closure? I'm interested in how they're using social media to support each other and kind of what routines they're adding to their life to add a sense of normalcy and joy.
That's a really, really, really great question. I've had the opportunity to talk with a lot of teens lately, and there's a lot of fear out there. Many of them have limited the amount of television that they watch, and they've limited the amount of social media they do when it's something that's related to getting news into their world, something that's not connecting them to other people socially, because the overwhelming amount of information that comes out all of the time is really more than anybody needs to take in. So limiting the amount of time you spend listening to the news, maybe it's just once a day, maybe it's once every few days, however it is that you want to do it, limiting that in a way so that you're not constantly in that is one way to take care of yourself. Kids are bored to tears. They're looking for something to do, and they know that they can't go outside and socialize with their friends, but what things can they do? Can they go and find the elders in the neighborhood and figure out who might need additional supplies or who might need, even a plate of cookies? I know that there's been a run on toilet paper, But did you know there's been a run on flour? And part of the reason there's been a run on flour is a lot of people are at home baking because baking makes them feel better. It's one of those comfort things that we do. So taking the opportunity to say as a teen, hey, you know, I want to make dinner tonight for the family because I'm home all day long and I'm going to take on dinner. Great. Let them do it. Mom, dad, give up control of the meal and let them go ahead and make whatever it is that their hearts desire because they want to feel that they're helping and that they contribute. And those are really, really important things for our teenagers. We also have a lot of young adults who are home from college. And I tell you, for a lot of kids, we have a lot of healthcare workers right now who need childcare. So reaching out to those healthcare workers who need childcare and saying, hey, you know, I can babysit, I can be a tutor, I can offer a class, I can do these types of things is really important. I know that's part of what my kids are doing right now to support people. And because they're in high school and college, they can do some tutoring with elementary school students. That's part of the structure that needs to happen. Our kids need routine. We all need routine. And those things are important. But what also is important is making sure that they've got an ability to connect with other people. We make sure that the teens we work with the Be Well Project have a group meet going all the time where we'll throw out a question now and then the next thing you see, 15 kids are answering that question and talking about how they're feeling and how they're scared and they don't know what life's going to look like a month from now and whether or not they're going to have prom and whether or not they're going to graduate and what's going to happen to their college funds. Being able to express those fears without people freaking out, being able to talk about it, even if we don't have the answers, those are important things to do. And setting the forums for kids to be able to do those things is one of the most important things we can do. That's why I think it's really great that the Work to Be Well project is going to start doing Instagram Lives so that we can begin to talk about those anxieties and crowdsource some ideas. There's a ton of great ideas online that you can start doing today to break up your day and not just sit in the waller that is watching all of the news all of the time.
Robin, thank you so much for taking the time today. You mentioned the Work to Be Well program a couple of times. So when we post this, both the transcript and the audio, we will also include links to the Work to Be Well site.